Welcome to Shadowed Tales Archive. Tonight, we invite you to descend into darkness with a chilling anthology of horror stories. This is episode 31. Let the nightmare begin. The Depths. Here is the journal I kept during my time at the Ash House. At times, I was unable to write, so some entries are recorded from memory. At the time of this journal, I had just been dropped off at the Ash House by my old parents. This journal spans somewhere between 2002 and 2003 in Gary, Indiana. January 17th, 2002, Elias talked for the first time in weeks. He told me how much he hated the instructor and how she was an evil woman. The devil incarnate. That's what he said. I couldn't agree more. January 30th, 2002. There must be something wrong with Elias. He's talked twice in the past 3 days. And to me, a ground-level resident, out of all people, I wonder if I have something he wants. That's the only reason anyone, especially Elias, would bother talking to me. February 5th, 2002. Everyone was whispering today. No one would come close to me, and I think I know why. 2 boys, Lucas and Noah, came up to me at lunch to tell me to save 2 seats at the ground floor table tomorrow. They're for the second floor, and me, being excited about someone talking to me, eagerly agreed. I didn't think about who they were or what they were known for. I saw the basement kids enter, Elias leading. Everyone huddled away from them. No one dared to look at them. I stared just long enough to see Elias glaring at Lucas and Noah as they walked away. They just smiled. I wonder why. February 6th, 2002. Today was horrible. Utterly horrible. As I mentioned yesterday, I saved a place at the ground floor table at lunch. At the sight of 2 second-floor kids, my floor mates all moved away. Lydia, was it? That was Lucas's first question. I nervously nodded my head. They both asked normal questions at first. We talked about the news going around the Ash House. Then Lucas got up and sat next to me. He was smiling, but not at me. He was smiling at Elias, who was glaring at him. I realized what was going on. I asked Lucas to stop. His smile faltered. He was looking at me now, and I didn't like that any more than before. He smiled again, and before I could react, he started pulling me towards him. There was a loud bang. Everything went quiet. All eyes turned to the basement floor table. Elias had slammed his tray down on the table. His dark, almond-shaped eyes were filled with rage. He made his way smoothly over to my table, and the kids at the end quickly scattered at the sight of the black-haired boy nearing. I'll give you 3 seconds to leave before I turn your bodies into tomorrow's mystery meat. Noah looked at Lucas. Lucas swallowed hard, then finally agreed and left. Elias looked at me once, the fiery inferno in his eyes beginning to die down, then returned to his table. February 10th, 2002. I got the news today. I will be moved to the basement at exactly 3:33 p.m. That's where the troublemakers go. I don't know which category I fit into, but I won't dare question it. Everyone on the ground floor refused to talk to me. No surprise there. When I got to the door that leads to the basement, my heart dropped. This was really happening. The instructor opened the door, and a blast of cold air billowed out. It was pitch black. My eyes struggled to adjust as the instructor pushed me down a step, then shut and locked the door behind me without a word. I could hear everyone walking around upstairs. I made my way down. I had no idea what the layout of this place was. I felt a brush against my arm and yelped. The voice calmed me down. I asked who it was. The voice replied immediately. Elias. He led me by hand for what felt like hours. Then he stopped, led me to a bed, and told me to sleep for now. That he'd be here if I needed him. February 11th, 2002. I woke up several times through the night. I don't know if it's day or night due to the darkness. I couldn't see well. I got out of bed and began to feel my way around. After a minute or so, I reached what felt like another bed. I felt my way up and touched something warm. I realized it was someone's stomach. I yelped as a hand grabbed my wrist. The voice asked who I was. I told them my name. They said they didn't know me and got out of bed, their hands still gripping my wrist. I was pushed down, and I braced myself for a slap, but then another voice chimed in. The new voice asked what was going on. The person let go of my hand and gasped. Elias. Elias told the young boy to get lost, and he did exactly that. Elias helped me up and led me to a different room. I thanked him, but he didn't respond. He just sat me down on another bed, presumably his. We sat there for a while. He read a book before finally telling me to stand up and follow him to the stairs. He shouted for everyone, and they all came. We went upstairs for lunch. Elias kept me close as we waited for the door to be unlocked. At lunch, nothing much happened, just the occasional glance toward our table. After, Elias took me back to his room and gave me the second bed. February 12th, 2002. I got out of bed and walked straight into a wall. Elias was there to lead me away from it, and I could have sworn I heard him snicker. At this point, my vision had adjusted just enough for me to see outlines. It was already lunch, and Elias waited for me. We hurried up. This time I didn't have to hold Elias's hand. When we walked in, we got many questioning stares, but they were quickly put to rest by a simple glare from Elias. We sat down next to each other at the table. We did not talk. A girl named Clara talked to me a lot. She kept it respectful, well aware that Elias was watching intently. She said she was 16 and had a sister in the basement with her that was 12. She told me about the system of the basement, which they had created on their own due to the lack of adults. What she told me was sort of a monarchy of some sort. Elias, though not the oldest, was their king. Whoever he would choose would be queen, though there was none. Everyone else was considered equal under their king's rule. Clara said that the oldest was 17, the youngest was 8, and Elias was 14. He was just under 1 year older than me. February 14th, 2002. Today, when I woke up, I was given the clothes for the basement floor by Elias. It was a plain black long-sleeve shirt, a plain black t-shirt, plain black sweatpants, and a black headband for girls. It went well with my dark hair and blue eyes. I was given the option of a haircut, which I took. To get it, I had to go to the second floor, which automatically meant Elias was accompanying me. Getting to the stairs was now an easy task due to my eyes, which had adjusted to the darkness at this point, and because of the layout that Elias had taught me yesterday. He stopped suddenly as the door opened on its own. He told me to wait until their faces turned gray. I looked up at the door entrance, and to my horror, 2 vaguely humanoid figures stood with faces that slowly began to morph into stormy gray smudges. When the faces turned fully gray, they disappeared. Elias proceeded up as if nothing had happened. When we finally got to the second floor, we got many stares, but no one dared talk with Elias around. When we got to the barber, Elias stood in the corner of the bathroom staring at me until finally the job was done. It was sort of bob cut, except it went to my shoulders. The barber asked Elias if he needed anything. Elias just stared at the barber, then left with me in tow. I guess he liked his straight, messy black hair. Subconsciously, I lifted my hand and ran it through his hair. It was incredibly soft and straight. I immediately pulled back as Elias's dark eyes turned to me. I apologized, and he just shook his head and continued walking. February 19th, 2002. The basement gives you strange dreams. They're scary. Many times I have woken up screaming, and every time Elias was there to lull me back to sleep. February 26th, 2002. There are scary things in the basement. The shadows. They follow you. They know you. With time, they consume you, and they become you. March 1st, 2002. Elias was called up to talk with the other kings and queens today. I could have gone. I asked to go, but since I wasn't officially declared a queen, I was forbidden to go with him. After he left, I sat alone for a while. Then 3 or 4 boys came in. They were the idiots from the changing room. They grabbed me and muffled my screams with a cloth. Then we entered a room. "Have fun in the well, darling," one of the boys said. "Let's see if Elias can save her before she loses her sanity," another laughed. The third boy shoved me through a small square in the wall, 3 feet off the ground, and whispered, "Bye-bye, darling." He slammed the cabinet-like door shut, and I was left alone in the well. March 3rd, 2002. The well is large. The well is dark. The well is home to the shadows. They surround you. It is cold. The well is the birthplace of evil. The well is home to the devil. The well has consumed countless minds, bodies, and souls. And now, the well has begun to consume me. March 5th, 2002. Elias saved me. He crawled into the well and found me. He dragged me out and carried me to his room and held me close to him. 2 days. That was how long I was stuck in the well. It felt like years. Time has no relevance in the well. I learned too much in the well. I learned about all the evil in the world. Every sin, death, and tear was transferred to me. The shadows told me. They told me many things, among them why babies are born crying. Do you want to know? It's because they have seen the basement, the shadows, the well. They have been told of the shadows. They have been touched by the shadows. They breathe the air the devil exhaled. They cry because they feel the pain of the basement. They cry because they're cradled by the shadows, who show them pain. Not even Pandora's box could release such horrors. As they grow, they forget, but they still remember how to do evil. That is why they cry. They cry for those who live in the basement, for those who are yet to see the basement. That's what the shadows say. In those 2 days, I was born again. I saw the well again, the shadows again, the devil again. I consumed a piece of each. I was given Pandora's box. I took everything but hope, and I devoured it. Because the only way to overcome pain is to become pain. The only way to abandon fear is to become fear. And the only way to find hope is to lose it first. March 7th, 2002. Today I felt a bit better after my experience in the well. We went up to lunch, and Elias demanded I stay as close to him as possible. The boys who put me in the well haven't been seen since I was put in there. I don't know where they went, and I'm not sure I want to. Elias and I sat at the end of the table with Clara and Mira. The first person to say anything was Mira. "What's the deal with your hair?" she said. I didn't know what she was going on about until Clara told her to shut up. It was too late. Elias already heard. At first he just stared at Mira. Then Clara wrapped her arm around her, as if she was worried Elias would hurt her. Elias turned his dark, almond-shaped eyes on me. A scowl formed on his face as he said, "Marie Antoinette syndrome." I stared at him. "Say what?" asked Mira. Clara responded, "Marie Antoinette syndrome, often used to describe early graying or whitening of hair due to stress." Queen Marie Antoinette was the Queen of France when she was captured and put on trial for execution. During her time locked up, her hair turned white due to extreme stress. We sat there silent for a while. Then Mira said, "I guess it's because those boys put you in the well, huh?" I flinched at the mention of that horrible place as Elias slammed a fist down and stood up. "If I hear one more word about the well," he began, "I swear to the gods, I'll kill every last one of you," he finished, pointing at all the basement kids. The lunchroom got real quiet after that. March 8th, 2002. Today I was awoken to the sound of Elias's voice. He was telling me to get up. We were going somewhere. I got up and followed him to the door. I was about to walk up when he grabbed my shoulder and pulled me back. I remembered he did this last time. He said the same thing. Wait until their faces turn gray. The same humanoid figure showed up, and their faces again grew into a bloody gray. "What are they?" I had said. "We call them the Guardians. They have killed 47 people in 2 years. That's only since I've gotten here." I asked him why they kill people. "We don't know," he replied. "We think it's a form of population control." I nodded as we continued upstairs. When we got to the main floor, I finally asked Elias where we were going. "We were going to see the instructor," he replied. My heart dropped. Why are we going to her?" I asked. His reply was simple. "I'm going to make you the queen." When we arrived in front of the door leading to the instructor's room, I started shaking. Elias grabbed my hand as he pushed open the door. When we walked in, there was a small room made out of metal before actually entering the instructor's room. 2 boys were lounging on the ground, but stood up when they saw Elias. Well, look who it is," the first boy said. I recognized him instantly. "Lucas Noah," I whispered. "Yes, that is what our names are." Lucas grinned as he stalked over to me. Before he could actually reach us, though, Elias stepped in front of me. "Would you be so kind as to open up that door?" Elias asked wryly. "Why, you little—" Lucas began, but was interrupted by Noah. "Lucas, just let them in. They may be from the basement, but Elias is still a king. And from the looks of it, I'd say he found his queen. So let them through and we'll just get this over with," he said quietly. "You should listen to your friend," Elias laughed. "You coward. You are just going to let these losers walk all over us? They're basement kids. We rule them. Why can't anyone see that?" Lucas screamed. With that, he swung his fist at Elias, who ducked and delivered a nasty right hook. Lucas shrieked in pain as thick red blood dripped from his broken nose. "Open the door, Noah." "I won't ask again," Elias snarled. Noah began to move toward the door, but Lucas shouted at him to stop. "We've worked so hard to get here, and I'm not letting Elias mess it up again," he snarled. Then he whirled to face Elias. "5 years, Elias," he laughed. "That's a long time to hold the weight of the basement, yeah?" He laughed maniacally as Elias clenched his fists, rage burning in his black eyes. "You've been down there for what? 7 years? I was 10 back then. We both know you can't stay down there forever, Elias." "Watch me," Elias said calmly, obviously livid now. "Huh," Lucas continued. "Elias, you're bonkers, absolutely insane if you truly believe you'll last that long. I bet the shadows in the well are so attached to you that at this point, no matter where you go, you'll hear the voices. This girl of yours is next. You can't handle it. Everything will disappear. You will leave." Lucas stopped so abruptly, I thought he might have had a heart attack. But then I saw that it was Elias. He had kicked him in the stomach, sending him hurtling across the floor. He hit the wall with a sickening crack. "Andrew, open the door," Elias snarled. Fear shone in Noah's slanted brown eyes as he ran over to the door and opened it up. Elias turned around to look at me, his eyes widening with what seemed to be terror, or maybe sadness. "Oh no, please don't do that. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you," Elias pleaded with me. It was only then that I realized I was crying. I had my hands over my mouth as well. He walked toward me, and I stumbled away from him and fell. He kept repeating that he was sorry as he held my hand. Then he pulled me up and said, "Come on, we have to get going." His voice was very quiet. Eventually, I got up and followed him. As we passed Noah, who had been holding the door all that time, he ran over to Lucas and started pushing him, begging him to get up. Lucas groaned a little, then started twitching, and Noah dragged him up and proceeded to go to the first door we entered through. Elias shut the door, and we were in darkness. "Wah," I began, but Elias put his free hand over my mouth. "Don't talk too much," he whispered as he continued to guide me through a long hallway. Eventually, we made it to a dark room with a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Under it, a small cherrywood dinner table was illuminated by the soft yellow light. Sitting there was the instructor herself. Her pale, bony hands untangled themselves as she gestured toward 2 seats on the opposite sides of the table. Her black, long-sleeved dress that went just past her ankles seemed to make her pale blue eyes glow. Her silver hair, done neatly in a bun, was glowing as well. "Hello, my children. How can I help you today?" she said, her rich voice ringing out in the dark room. We were silent. "Come on now, sit down. I won't ask again," she demanded. We did as she said and sat down, our hands still intertwined, but Elias seemed to be hiding them. "Now, tell me why you are here," she said, with a sickeningly sweet smile plastered on her pale face. "I would like to make Lydia the queen of the basement," Elias said in a low tone. The instructor's smile faltered. "Ah, you moved on already, huh? I remember your old queen. Bright young lady. Too bad she had such a fragile mind," the instructor giggled. I looked at Elias. His face was set in a blank stare. I looked back to the table, only to find the instructor staring at me with her pale eyes. "You are new here," she smiled. "How did you replace Elias's old queen so quickly?" I didn't know what to say. Elias dropped my hand and slammed it on the table, sending a loud crack through the room. She is nothing to me, nothing to anyone. She's just a weak little girl that doesn't know what's going on in this world. I just needed a pawn for my little game of chess. She seemed good enough, plus the basement kids started having doubts. I needed to put them to rest. So if you think this child is worth anything, you're wrong. I stared in shock at him. The instructor started laughing uncontrollably. That's my boy. Very well. She can be your queen, or shall I say pawn. She began to giggle again. Never mind that. You are released. At that, the lights turned off and I was left in darkness. I stood up and started walking. I couldn't comprehend what happened. I found my way to the door and opened it up to the little metal room where Elias had beat up Lucas. If you think this child is worth anything, you're wrong. That phrase was ringing in my head. I kept walking, head down, when I bumped into something. It was Noah. He looked startled at first and looked around, most likely for Elias. Then he just whispered. He didn't mean it. It was a show for the instructor, so she wouldn't get upset. I looked up, but he had already begun to open the door leading to the hallway. I had hoped it was true with all my heart as I walked down the stairs leading to the basement. Noah unlocked the door to the basement. I stepped in and walked to my room. I laid down and heard Elias say he was sorry. I smiled and said it was okay. Then I heard crying, and he said, "No, I'm really sorry." I looked into the darkness at the other end of the room. "It's all right, just go to bed," I said. I didn't want to fall asleep to the sound of Elias crying. March 10th, 2002. When I got out of bed today, Elias was stuffing things into little black bags. I got out of bed and he looked at me. "I packed all of your things. We are leaving tonight," he said. I looked at him with disbelief. "Where?" I inquired. "What?" He began zipping the bags as he replied. "We are getting out of the ash house. I don't care where we go, as long as it's not here. As for the why, we are leaving before the shadows start to feed off of your mind." I swallowed. "What?" "The shadows will feed on my mind." He gave a deep sigh and walked over to me. "You are a queen now. Therefore, you will carry the weight of the basement on your shoulders. It will feed off of your mind. If we leave, then we can still save your sanity," he said. He walked back to the bed and tossed the black duffel to me and said, "We leave tonight, but first we need to make a stop." "What about Hannah and Mira?" I asked, thinking of the brown-eyed, blonde-haired girls that were always so kind. "We can't just leave them." I whined, internally scolding myself for sounding like such a baby. Elias sighed and rubbed his temple, then replied, "Do you know how much I do for you? Fine. They can come, but if they die, it's not on me." I got chills when he said that. "Anyway, let's go. I want to get this over with." He sighed. We began to walk out of our room toward the hallway with the stairs. We got to the opening and peeked out, remembering what Elias told me about the humanoid figures. "We should be good now," Elias said. We began to walk into the hallway when I bumped into something. I looked up and screamed the loudest scream I've ever heard. When I looked up to see what I bumped into, I saw a human that was at least 7 to 8 feet 8 inches. It had no hair and looked like it had one of those bodysuits on. The thing's face was what got me, though. Its mouth was curled up in a wide, almost comical grin. The edges of its mouth reached all the way past its nose, which looked like Voldemort's, and up to its eyes, which were simple white circles. "Your time is up. Your time is up!" It shrieked in a shrill, screeching voice as it reached for me and Elias's necks. Elias grabbed my arm and pulled me past the creature. I was screaming hysterically all the way. I couldn't help myself, so as we were flying up the stairs, I looked back one last time to see the creature running at us on its hands and feet in a backbend position, with its neck twisted so that its face was above its chest, staring straight at us. Right before we turned at the top of the stairs, the thing stopped and screeched in that shrill voice. "Your time is up. Your time is up." Right as I turned my head, Elias slammed the door shut. "What was that?" I asked. "The Guardian," he huffed, gasping for air. He bent down and put his hands on his knees. "Let's go, we have to hurry up." He then grabbed my hand and started up the stairs. Eventually, we made it to this ladder that led up to a small door in the ceiling. "You go up first," he said, no longer out of breath. I climbed up and pushed through the small square. It flew up and landed on a green carpeted floor. "Hello, who might you be?" asked a boy in a voice so soft it was like he was singing. I climbed up and twirled around to face a young blonde-haired boy with green eyes. I'm Lydia," I stammered, shocked that there was anyone here. There was a golden light shining through a circular window about 8 feet off the ground, setting the room ablaze. I moved aside as Elias slipped through the door. "Hello, Elias," said the boy, his golden hair shining along with the room, and his eyes shining like emeralds. "It's been so long. How are you? Is this the girl I've heard so much about?" he asked, rising from the wooden chair in which he was seated. "Hello, Rowan. I'm doing fine. And yes, this is the girl." Elias spoke to the boy, Rowan, as if they were old friends, though Rowan seemed to be over 17. "So the time has come, huh?" Rowan laughed, then sighed. Sorrow seemed to fill his eyes. "It's been so long. I missed the sky. Maybe you can see it for me, like we used to. Do you remember when we were kids and would play in the woods with Rinkai? That was so much fun. I wish we could go back, but because of me, we can't. One stupid mistake and I ruined our lives forever." He began to laugh sadly. "And all because I wanted to get some flowers for a stupid game." He began to cry, his green eyes shining. I looked at Elias, wondering who Rowan was to him. "It wasn't your fault, Rowan. I was the one who suggested going to the old creek knowing Mother told us not to." Elias's eyes looked like dark galaxies, with billions of stars and planets sparkling in them, the light making them even more mesmerizing. Then I processed what Elias was saying. "You are brothers, aren't you?" I said. Rowan looked at me and nodded. "When were you guys taken?" I asked. Rowan seemed to be thinking for a minute. "I believe it's been 7 years or so. We were playing a game where we ruled the world together. Then I suggested making flower crowns for the game. So we left our backyard and went to a creek nearby. When we got there, a large man came out and grabbed us. He knocked us out, and next thing we knew, we were here." He said the last part with a bitter voice. Then something occurred to me. "You don't mean Turkey Creek, do you?" Elias and Rowan looked at me in surprise. "You know it?" asked Elias. "Yeah, that's the last place I remember after ending up here. I was swimming alone in a creek when something hit my head." Elias stared at me. Then Rowan began laughing again. I guess that's where they got their reservoir of kids. I don't know why, but that made me laugh too. Then Elias started laughing. After around 5 minutes, we finally stopped. "You guys ought to get going now," said Rowan. "You're not going with us?" I asked, confused. Rowan shook his head and smiled sadly, then took one more step, revealing chains around his neck, legs, and arms. "I'm stuck here. Made one too many mistakes," he said. Then he held his arms out to Elias. "I'll miss you, Elias. I won't forget you, remember that." Elias walked over to him and gave him a long hug. Then Rowan hugged me, whispering in my ear, "Don't let him go. He's more broken than he lets on. Please be the glue that welds him back together into something greater." He pulled away, hand still on my shoulders. "Okay, Lydia." I smiled, trying not to cry. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Okay, Rowan." He smiled and said, "Go on now, the world is waiting." Elias smiled once more at Rowan and then left. When we got to the basement, Clara and Mira were waiting for us. "About time," Mira giggled. Clara then showed us some matches and flashlights she had somehow acquired. "How did they know to come?" I asked Elias as we began walking. Elias smiled and said, "I have my ways." Then he grabbed my arm and whispered in my ear, "To get out of here, we have to use the well. Can you do it?" I nodded. When we got to the well, we stood there and stared at the small door for a bit. Elias volunteered to go in first, then Hannah second, Mira third, and I would go last. Elias took a flashlight from Hannah before he crawled in, and Hannah handed one to me and Mira before she herself crawled in. I helped Mira crawl in, and then I myself crawled into the well. It must have dropped by at least 20 degrees right off the bat. I started to shake when Elias crawled over and patted me on the shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, and we began to crawl through the well. The ground was made of soft dirt that was ice cold. After a long time, Elias told us to stop, and we stood up. "Careful, this is where it gets tricky," he whispered. A large circle illuminated a small room. It was a lone wall, nothing around it. The circle had weird flames on it that seemed to burn like actual coal. Then it spoke, but only in a simple poem. "Hello, my children of the dark. I come to warn you to keep your mind sharp, for what lay ahead has more bite than bark, and will take what you know and tear it apart. Now for your first trial, you must have a steady mind. It takes but a drop of ruby to find the key that will finally break your bind. But careful in doing so you don't break your mind. Now don't look so scared, your trial awaits. That leads to the end of the chain you must break, in order to find freedom from this house you so hate. Now go, my children, before it's too late." As the voice finished, the light from the circle abruptly changed to a scarlet red, and, to my horror, the guardian walked out in its demonic back-bend position. It shrieked and started to run at us, and everyone was screaming as Elias darted forward and began to bash the creature's head in with his flashlight. Once the creature stopped moving, Elias backed away, covered in scarlet blood, resembling the color of the light. Elias looked at us and said, "There are hidden messages in the oracle's words. Be ready for anything." Then he proceeded to scrape the bloody end of the flashlight on the circle, and the light returned to normal, as the oracle said. "You finished the first trial thanks to Elias, but 2 more to go until you can fly away from this nightmare, so you can't yet die. Come on now, why so shy? Talking to your friends is the key if you hope to escape and succeed in finding a new home where you can be anything that you can dream. But a warning to heed, my little friends, one you should consider, as to not meet your end. This next trial will make your mind twist and bend, and once it is gone, no more help will I lend." Once she finished, the bright circle opened up and led to another room, this one with a green triangle on a lone wall. The green hue gave us an eerie feeling. The triangle began to glow brighter as the oracle whispered, "Remember what I said, or off with your head." Right as her sentence ended, images began to flash through my head. Memories that were not mine. Memories of war, death, disease, famine, sadness, and torture. I remember hearing screaming in the distance. Then I realized it was me. When the images finally stopped, everyone was on their knees. Everyone except Mira, who was laying on the ground muttering to herself. Hannah ran over to her, and Elias ran over to me as he covered my eyes. Then I heard an awful scream, and I took Elias's hands off my eyes, to see Mira clawing at a bloody mass that used to be her face. Her hand suddenly dropped, and she stopped moving. Black hands began emerging from the ground and grabbing at Myra's body, pulling her into the ground. Elias and I ran over to Hannah and pulled her away and through the green triangle, as she screamed and kicked, trying futilely to return her sister, who was now completely underground. When we got to the next room, the triangle door slid shut, preventing us from turning back. This room had a regular oak door with a gold hue coming from it. The oracle again began to speak. "You lost one along the way. For her spirit, be sure to pray. A riddle you must solve to pass this gate. One final game for your mind to play. Tell me, who is the god of your dark and dusk? Who gives you feelings like hate and lust? Who is the one that you learn to trust? And who is the one that makes your heart rust?" I looked at Elias, and he looked at me. "Is it the instructor?" he asked. "No, my child, you've guessed wrong. 2 more tries till your lives are gone," the oracle said, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. Then Hannah blurted out, "It's Mira. It has to be Mira." "Wrong again, I'm sad to say, but you have 1 more try and you can leave alive today." The oracle's voice rang out in the small room. Elias whirled around and screamed, "You idiot! We only have 1 more guess now. Why in the world would you waste it on that? Hannah began to sob, and I looked at Elias and yelled, "Don't say that. She just lost her sister. She was like a daughter to her." Then he shot back, "Yeah, well, I lost my brother. He was like a father to me too. You don't see me screaming out his name." I stopped. "Parents," I whispered. Then I looked at the door and shouted, "Parents. The answer to your riddle is parents." The oracle replied, "Your answer correct, my dear. You may leave behind this house along with fear. But don't forget from where you came. For if you do, it'd be a shame." The door opened, and Elias and I walked out of the door in disbelief. It was a starry night. Cold, crisp air flooded my lungs, left over from the long winter. "Wait," I said. "Where is Hannah?" Elias and I turned around to see Hannah light a match and drop it. The door burst into flames as I screamed. The door then caved, trapping Hannah in there, along with Rowan, Noah, Lucas, and all of the children in the ash house. As I cried, we watched the house burn. Sirens wailed in the distance as light began to pierce the cool morning, bringing a new day, a new life, and new hope with it. I'll never forget that sunset because that was the day I was set free. The thorns of my daughter's heart. When I became a father, my whole world started revolving around Eliza. She was the most perfect, most treasured little thing in my world. We are kind of an unconventional family. My wife, Vivian, is a CEO, while I'm an artist and stay-at-home dad. Vivian and my parents are people I cherish and am grateful for, but I felt like I never knew what love was until I held my little Eliza in my arms for the first time. I know everyone thinks their kids are amazing and special, but believe me, Eliza is amazing and special. I had no problem living almost exclusively in order to take care of her, raise her, help her, and please her. Eliza is my whole universe. I was grateful for the precious being I was given. I woke up in the middle of every night to feed her when she was a baby with a smile on my face. I taught her first words. I put her to bed with a princess story every single night as she grew up into a sweet kid. We became the best of friends, watching cartoons and chasing butterflies together. Vivian was so thankful to be able to be a mother and still focus 100% on her career. She would come home every night to a hot meal, happy baby girl, and overjoyed husband. I never knew a family as happy as ours until the incident started. First, it was Eliza's cousin, Hannah. They pretty much were born together and spent the early years of their childhood constantly playing together and being really close. When Hannah and Eliza were 5 years old, Vivian's sister announced she would move away to another state. Being a single mother, she was too tight on money, even with Vivian helping, and was to move back to my in-laws' house. Eliza found out she wouldn't be able to see Hannah more than thrice a year and cried her eyes out the whole night in my arms. We fell asleep in my rocking chair next to the break of morning. It was heartbreaking. I hated seeing my perfect little angel cry. She seemed to be in so much pain. I promised her that we would visit Hannah. Eliza would soon start going to school, and I assured her she would make a lot of new friends. A few days after that, Hannah went missing. Everyone in the family was crazy after her, but nobody was able to find a clue. It was like the girl disappeared into thin air. Vivian's sister was devastated at first, but she followed up with the plan of moving away. She soon married a nice man and had another child. Vivian doesn't talk much with her now because she thinks her sister moved on too fast and completely forgot about her first kid. Hannah was never seen again, even after all these years, nor were her remains found. As a family, we did our best to get over this tragedy together. Kids' brains are amazing to process everything. After a few months, it was like my daughter was past her loss. When Eliza was in 2nd grade, she was crazy about her teacher, Mrs. Whitaker. She was a fairly old lady, chubby and gentle, and treated all the kids like their own granddaughters. The school was girls only. Her warm smile could make an adult feel as if they'd been tucked into a comfy bed with a teddy bear. She was the greatest, and despite her loving nature, The girls were perfectly disciplined and had amazing grades. It was like they would do anything to earn and keep Mrs. Whitaker's affections. Eliza was raised without a constant presence of a grandmotherly figure. I moved from England to marry Vivian, while her parents live in another state and don't visit too frequently. So you might imagine how overjoyed Eliza was to finally have an older lady showering her with constant attention and unlimited affection. But being an older lady, Mrs. Whitaker was close to retirement. She clearly loved her job and was postponing this moment, but when she got sick, she had no option other than to take a leave. Eliza freaked out, feeling abandoned and depressed. I assured her she would still see Mrs. Whitaker when she got better, but she didn't. The school was more incisive about making her retire, and she had no choice but to acquiesce. Mrs. Whitaker went missing from the hospital just a few days after deciding to retire. After that, little by little, we moved past yet another traumatic experience. My heart was shattered to a million pieces when Eliza asked why everyone she loved had to suddenly disappear. I could do nothing but promise her I wouldn't. I took Eliza to a great therapist, and we even went to Disneyland, just the two of us. Eliza and Vivian loved each other, but they weren't super close. Since my wife couldn't take a break from her job often, most of our family fun times were just me and Eliza. And they were perfect. Being showered with all my love, Eliza started to improve again, but she only got better when she became friends with Chloe. They were both 9 at the time. Chloe was a classmate and lived nearby. She was a polite and easygoing girl, and I couldn't be happier than to see my daughter excited to go to school again and having such good company. This time, I thought the peace would last. Our family had an amazing 4 years and 10 months, until Chloe, at age 14, announced she would go to an internship in France. It was her childhood dream, and she finally got it. She would study abroad during the entire duration of high school. Chloe called me uncle, and I grew to like her like she was my real niece, but I couldn't find it in me to be happy for her accomplishment. I knew what would happen. I just knew it. Eliza, of course, was devastated. She felt abandoned and betrayed. I gently explained that she could still be friends with Chloe overseas, that they would have so much exciting things to share with each other, and that Chloe still loved her and cherished her as a most important friend. But it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to fulfill her lifelong dream. I emphasized how we should be happy and proud for her, and that Eliza could spend all her vacations in France if she wanted. After our constant talks about it, Eliza seemed to deal better with this loss. I never felt more relief than when the day of Chloe's trip came and nothing happened to her. Some hours later, Chloe texted me, "Uncle arrived at the airport. Getting a cab now." But she never got in the cab. She simply vanished from the airport. Up to that moment, that was the loss that I grieved over the most. Poor little Chloe, just 14 and full of dreams. This hit Vivian and me really hard, but strangely, Eliza seemed almost fine with the disappearance and possible death of her best friend. Chloe's tragic disappearance brought Eliza and her longtime crush, Alex, together. Alex was a sweet boy, despite being a sports enthusiast. His heart and brains were in the right place, just like his muscles, so I didn't freak out when my then 15-year-old daughter started to date. I felt so happy for her. She had confided in me regarding her passions a year ago, but never made a move. When he learned what happened to Chloe, Alex immediately took upon himself the task of cheering Eliza up and distracting her from her pain. He was such a nice boy. They were a happy couple for precisely 19 months. Eliza broke up with me. Eliza said one day, as she entered the house, screaming and crying. He said, "I'm too clingy. I raised my daughter to be affectionate, and I see no problem with that, but maybe she crossed the line and became possessive. I suggested we see her therapist to help her deal with this kind of problem, so she can talk again to Alex and try to fix the relationship. I pointed out that romance takes time and work, and that her mother and I have been happily married for almost 20 years because we are always doing our best to become better people for one another. I try to calm her down, assuring her that anyone can see Alex is head over heels for her, and that they can improve their relationship. Eliza hated the idea. She felt like the breakup was definitive and wanted the problems solved right in that moment. She wanted to keep feeling loved by him the whole time. Can you blame her? The first one is the worst one when it comes to a broken heart. That same night, Alex went missing while out of town with a few friends. Like all the others, he was never found, dead or alive. By this time, my heart was unbearably aching, but my daughter's existence kept me going. My love for her hasn't wavered or faded since I first saw her. It has only grown. I was grateful and overjoyed to see my baby maturing into a sweet kid, and then into a beautiful and capable young lady. After Alex went missing, everything was a blur to me for weeks. I was depressed and heavily medicated, and my love for my daughter was everything I felt I had, but I didn't know if I could carry my heavy heart any longer. Eventually, during dinner, Vivian suggested that Eliza go to college in another state. She's smart, she reasoned, and in our city we don't have such great options. Do you want me to leave? Eliza asked, unspeakably hurt. Am I a bother to you, Mom? Of course not, sweetheart. You just deserve better, Vivian said, attempting to calm her down. Why don't you and Dad move with me then? I don't want to be without him. Vivian explained she couldn't just transfer from her job, and Eliza, once again, freaked out. They had never fought before. After that, I was afraid I knew what was going to happen, so I had to call Eliza to my studio and talk to her. Baby, are you aware of your doings? I softly asked. My doings? What do you mean, Dad? I mean this. I opened a curtain and showed her a small body, completely surrounded by shiny golden thorns. They were like a cage, enveloping a fragile human being. The tiny body was neither alive nor dead. It was something else. It was cold like death, but showed no signs of decay. No blue dead lips, but no breathing. It was like they were asleep, otherworldly beings. Needless to say, the tiny body belonged to Hannah. It showed up in my studio just after her disappearance, and I swear to God, it was floating. The golden thorns were sheer, but it was impossible to get through them and touch the person. I honestly spent weeks thinking it was a hallucination, but when Eliza started to move on, I finally understood. Every time, the missing person related to my daughter showed up in my studio, which Eliza, Vivian, and the cleaning lady never set foot in. Eliza's feelings of loss and despair produce a prison of golden thorns around people she loves and believes to have lost, and they promptly vanish from wherever they are. They were never kidnapped by a person. They are just left unconscious and frozen for eternity, right here in our basement. Dad, I didn't. I swear. She didn't have to say it twice. First of all, she's my special little girl, and I believe her. Secondly, it's obviously she didn't have the power to kidnap Hannah and Mrs. Whitaker without a trace as a little child, and never left home when the other two disappeared in another town, in another country even. Whenever someone disappeared, I felt better than when they said they would leave me, Dad, she simply stated. Knowing they're choosing to leave me makes me broken and empty, but when they're gone this way, I feel whole again. Eliza has no queasiness about it. As long as the people she's losing are gone for good, she will feel better. She didn't take them, but she doesn't feel bad about what actually happened, either. No matter how I assured her that Vivian loves her to bits and wants to be by her side, she felt rejected. So you can imagine what happened to my wife a few days after the discussion. It all makes me sad, but Eliza's my whole world, and I'm not only going to let her feel and do as she pleases. I'm turning the people she loves into art. I want her to keep them untouched as they were before they almost left her. So I'm creating a giant mural with their frozen bodies, peacefully and forever preserved inside a cage of golden thorns. Echoes beneath the hill. I remember when I first moved into this accursed house. I was 10 years old, And I loved all the things a 10-year-old boy loves: climbing trees, catching bugs, playing cowboys and Indians, those sorts of things. We had moved from the hustle and bustle of the Big Smoke to the small Cheshire village of Helsby. Helsby, with its prominent Redstone Hill, sits nestled at the top of the Mersey estuary. The hill sports a thick covering of gnarled trees, misshapen by the strong onshore winds that rush from their home on the Irish Sea, funneled by the estuary, coming to rest at the foot of the hill. The village is also surrounded by a vast expanse of marsh that holds a depressing, sullen atmosphere even on a clear sunny day. The various wetland birds add a constant chorus of shrill cries. Our new country home was, and still is, an old Jacobean house with a sprawling garden to the rear, scaling the looming red hill behind. A venerable playground for a 10-year-old boy. The first thing I noticed upon moving to Helsby was how quiet it was at night. You could hear a pin drop, and this dead silence was unsettling for me, having been used to the constant ebb and flow of noise from the Liverpool streets. I would sit up in bed for hours, listening for any sort of noise, fancying I could hear people talking or the pitter-patter of mice scurrying around in the dark. Sometimes, though, I thought I could hear other things. Things more sinister. Things I knew were there, just beyond my sight, hidden in the inky shadows. The first time I became aware of the low, barely audible whisper was maybe 3 or 4 weeks after we had moved. I was not frightened or worried by this, as I merely assumed it was Margaret and Thomas talking or exchanging some heated words, as they often did. Their relationship was fractious, my mother wanting more for herself and for us, and my poor father being unable to provide. The whisper started during a tempestuous storm that raged outside my window, the wind and rain battering the rust-colored front of our house. I had just finished reading and was dozing off when I thought I heard my name being called in a low, muffled tone. Ethan, Ethan. It repeated perhaps 4 or 5 times. I quickly flicked on my bedside light, but couldn't for the life of me figure out where my name was being called from. I sat there in the dark, the covers pulled up to my chin. I must have sat for an hour or more, straining to hear. In the end, I put it down to my imagination and eventually dozed off into a sound, dreamless sleep. The next morning, over breakfast, I asked, "Margaret, did you call me last night?" She said that she hadn't, and turned to Thomas when I asked the same. He had not either. He told me that old houses make strange noises, and, with the sounds of last night's vicious storm, I shouldn't worry, that I would soon get used to them. He jokingly teased me, saying my overactive imagination was playing tricks on me. Oh, how I wish that were true. That day, I ventured outside to inspect the storm damage. Murky gray clouds still clung to the hill summit, making it seem much more immense than it truly was. Looking up into the tree line, I was amazed by the number of old trees that had fallen in the night, lying motionless on the hillside like fallen soldiers. Many of these trees appear to have rotted from the inside out, probably due to some insidious fungus slowly draining their life. That evening, after dinner, I sat at a desk in the front room, doodling in a great scrapbook. The desk was quietly nestled in a moldy, cobweb-filled alcove when I again heard that menacing whisper of my name. Ethan, Ethan. I turned, looking around the room, but nothing was there. It couldn't be the storm this time, as the skies were calm. So, as Thomas had said, I put it down to my overactive imagination and continued to doodle. Then I heard it again. Ethan. This time, it was followed by the quick succession of pattering feet. I jumped up, knocking my chair backwards to the ground. I slowly approached the old mahogany sideboard where I had last heard the pattering of small, unseen feet come to a stop, only to find nothing there. Confused and frightened, I crouched down and looked under the sideboard, finding only dust-filled cobwebs. However, as I stood up, my fingers brushed over a series of small scratches at shin height on the sideboard leg, as if some miniature, human-like figure had been hiding there, watching me, tiny clawed hands gripping the wood. This growing feeling of being watched intensified over the following weeks. The frequency of the whispering increased, along with other bizarre sounds. It all came to a climax late one evening, as I was playing close to the great oak just beyond our garden boundary. The sun had almost set, and long twisted shadows stretched across the lawn, though I was too absorbed in collecting the abundant acorns scattered around the ancient tree to notice. That's when I spotted them, a pair of bright green eyes staring at me with malicious intent from a clearing in the bushes. In fright, I dropped my collection of acorns and shuffled back in the dirt, trying to put distance between myself and this unknown creature. Perhaps 10 or 12 seconds passed, but in my mind, it felt like an eternity. The creature held its ground, staring dead into my eyes. Then, with the flash of a wide, toothy grin, it darted off into the bushes, leaving me trembling all over. I knew then that this was my unseen stalker. Not much happened after the incident in the garden that day, and the winter passed relatively uneventfully. The leaves shifted through their spectrum of colors. Christmas came and went, and as the first signs of life reappeared on the looming heights of Helsby Hill, I grew confident that the evil little creature, with all that harm and hate in its eyes, had gone for good. We were in the midst of an unseasonably warm spring, and much of my free time was spent exploring the highs and lows of the hill behind our house. I had become an avid adventurer. Being that little bit older gave me the confidence to wander further than I had ever been allowed before. In hindsight, this was my undoing. For one sunny weekend afternoon, I was hurriedly making my way up the rat track I had worn into the garden lawn, bursting through the flimsy fence, headfirst into the bushes and trees. I was scrambling and climbing steadily to the first vantage point on the hill when I felt a sharp, painful scratch on the back of my leg, followed by what sounded like laughter. When I reached the huge rotted log that marked the vantage point, I stopped to examine the source of my pain. To my horror, I found 5 tiny, evenly spaced tears in my trousers, which had also cut my skin and drawn blood. I sat there in shock for what seemed like an age, panic-stricken and paralyzed with fear as the realization sank in. Whatever had been stalking me in my home was now actively following me. And worse, it was causing me harm. When I finally zoned back in, I felt a massive rush of adrenaline, and I hurriedly made my way home, only stopping briefly to listen to see if I was being followed. When I arrived home, I was shaken. Seeing my nervous state and the tatty condition of my trousers, Margaret asked what had happened. I dismissed her question, telling her the neighbor's dog had chased me, and in my effort to flee, I had torn my trousers on a bramble. I did not dare tell her the truth. Besides, will my parents have even believed me? That evening, as I prepared for bed, I was on edge, fearing that whatever had attacked me that afternoon would make its way into the house, into my room, and this time caused me considerably more harm. I spent over an hour checking all the usual places a child checks: under the bed, in the wardrobe, and the numerous shadow-filled spaces around my room. Only when I had deemed my room creature-free did I venture to sleep. The night passed without incident, or so I thought. Upon waking, I found the bed sheets around me littered with the crisscrossing of tiny clawed feet and handprints, some of which had been only centimeters from my sleeping head. I let out a scream and ran from the room. Shrieking, I dragged Margaret and Thomas to my room to show them what had happened in the depths of the night. Surely they had to believe me now. Entering the room and seeing for themselves the state of the bed sheets, they surmised that a wild animal had perhaps gotten in during the night. A wild animal here, in the Cheshire countryside? The closest thing to a wild animal was Mrs. Anderson's Shih Tzu further along the street. However, upon inspecting the footprints and claw marks, they became more confused than anxious and laughed it off as a clever prank I had played on them. They told me I should apply those brains to my schoolwork. I went to school that day terrified out of my mind, knowing that something was living in the woods behind my house, and worse, that it could enter my house unseen, climb onto my bed, and do God knows what while I slept. The school day passed painfully slow, but it gave me time to think about how I would deal with whatever had come uninvited into my room the previous night. Finally, school had finished, and I arrived home with my mind made up. I would take on whatever it was. I sat that night. Well, past my usual 8 p.m. bedtime. Margaret and Thomas had gone to bed, and as far as I could tell, they were sound asleep. Around midnight, as I fought to stay awake, I heard the pitter-patter of those horrible little clawed feet, followed by the low whispers. Ethan. My heart started to race, and I frantically scanned the room, looking for the source of the whispering voice. Then suddenly, my eyes fell upon it, standing there in the corner of my room. It must have come through a small hatch I had never noticed in the bedroom floor, covered by a small table. I guess it was used to access the piping under the house, or something like that. It stood hunched, maybe 1.5 feet tall, with long, thin arms ending in short, stubby, claw-like fingers. It had huge green, shining eyes that, even in the low light of the room, still glowed unnaturally bright. Its torso was quite stumpy for the length of its arms and legs. Its legs were also long, ending in short, stubby feet with hideous clawed toes. Its skin, from what I could see in the dim light, was a mottled green-gray color, stretched over a bony, misshapen skeleton. It stood there, watching me for an age. Then it quickly started to walk toward me, its clawed feet tinkering on the ground as it moved. I sat there, petrified, unable to move. The next thing I knew, it had shot across the room and was there, on my bed, crawling towards me. Its hideous clawing hands made tiny tears in the bed sheets, while its feet and legs left dirty smudges on my white linen. All the while, it whispered in that horrible, low, guttural tone, Ethan. I shut my eyes and hoped it would all go away. I opened my eyes, and the creature was gone. Bright spring sunshine threaded its luminous tendrils through my bedroom curtains. Was it all a dream? I asked myself, assuming I must have fallen asleep and dreamt the entire thing. I jumped out of bed and hurried downstairs in search of breakfast. When I arrived in the kitchen, I saw Margaret standing by the sink, her face in her hands, heavy sobs lurching from her body. Thomas was standing there with a hand on her back, making small, affectionate circles as if to comfort her. This shocked me. I approached, unsure of what had happened. Then my mother spoke, her voice a faint, whispering cry. How could this have happened? What has happened to our boy? I was confused. Our boy? Did they mean me? I asked Thomas, what is wrong? What has happened? He turned to look at me, saying nothing, his hazy eyes filled with tears. He gave Margaret a short hug and walked toward me, tears streaming down his face. I was growing more and more alarmed. I asked again, Thomas, Margaret, what has happened? What is going on? Still nothing. He reached the door and walked past me up the stairs. I followed, unsure of what I would find, as he headed toward my bedroom door. Turning the handle, he entered, the door giving its usual squeak. Through the opening, I could see a form on my bed, covered in my duvet. I screamed and rushed into the room. What was this? Who was this? I turned to Thomas, standing there in the doorway. He seemed unsure whether to enter. He ignored me still. I stood motionless as he approached the bed and pulled back the covers. And there, in that bed, lay me. I know now that whatever lives in the wooded expanse of that redstone hill ruthlessly murdered me that night. And it sits there still, in the undergrowth, waiting for another boy or girl to come live here in my house. But I suppose it won't be all that bad. At least, I'll have someone to play with.
And that was tonight's tale from the Shadowed Tales archive. If it left a mark on your mind, if the silence feels heavier now, then the story did what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the darkness. New stories are always on their way. Until then, keep the lights low and the doors locked.